Hi guys, my name is Alfredo Enrique Jimenez Calderon. Welcome to my gallery walk. And for this exhibition, I have created some posters in order to put into them information about a very important learning method that is called the silent wave. This method focuses on the teacher's role as a silent facilitator, on the responsibility of students to formulate and test their hypotheses about how language works, about the materials they use, and about the way they acquire class activities. Through this study on the silent way, I have been able to analyze certain advantages and disadvantages of using this method. First of all, I don't know if I could teach my language with this method since the teacher hardly speaks in class. One of the advantages I have seen is that we can teach grammar in a logical way. This method is used to emphasize linguistic production and thus before understanding the meaning. Another positive assessment of this method is that through the teacher's silence, the students may be forced to continually reflect on their learning. I think that the way of learning vocabulary and pronunciation can work and dismotivate students. But the silent way is the name of a method of English teaching. This method, the teacher tries not to speak and encourage the students to be the ones to produce the largest possible number of sentences. In this method, learning is understood as an activity oriented toward problem solving, creativity, and discovery. The teacher doesn't criticize or praise the behavior of the student, since it interferes in the development of their internal criteria. Expect students to learn at different levels. The teacher seeks continuous progress, not perfection. But here is something important about this method: the origin. This method was developed by Caleb Gatteno in 1972, which rediscovered and applied in language teaching. Sorry. This method is mainly used for mathematics, but it has become popular in the language teaching classroom, in particular in the silent way. It can be used to teach topics such as prepositional place, phrases, and pronunciation. Objectives: develop in students the main oral and auditory elements of the foreign language that is learned. Fluency close to native. Correct pronunciation. Offer a practical knowledge of grammar. The silent wave is based on three hypotheses. Put attention because this is very important for us. Language learning is facilitated if it is accompanied by a physical object. It is easier to learn a new language if the student believes and discovers it rather than repeating or remembering it. It will be learned if problems relate to the contents to be learned are solved. The silent way materials. The method is carried out through experimentation. The materials used are a set of colored strips, colorful murals to deal with vocabulary and pronunciation, a pointer, reading and writing exercises, fiddles painting, drawing books, audio tapes, and movies. Features: students have to develop their own learning criteria. Language is not learned by repeating structures. The teacher starts the class with something he already knows and moves into the unknown. The role of the teacher. This is something very important. The teacher must be silent. He is a neutral observer. He must teach, test, and evaluate. He mustn't rephrase, support, shape, or direct students' responses. He must create motivating environment, and he must create the materials that he will use in each of the classes. The teacher is the director. The role of the student. A student must experiment. He perform analysis. He goes through the trial error process. A student is independent, autonomous, and responsible. He has to formulate his own rules and conclusions. The student is capable of self-assessment and self-correction by developing internal criteria. Negative aspect about the silent way used with children. In my opinion, I consider that a negative aspect during the implementation of this method is that the silence is not positive for the pronunciation and listening part because the student doesn't have a reference to produce the words that they need to learn. Advantages: a student respond to their own motivation, and students focus in class, they concentrate. But it works in small ones. Disadvantages: lack of work with real materials, lack of being in front of the real language. Is the method appropriate for elementary school EFL classes? The method is quite effective, but I think that for people who already have knowledge of the language. For a child who is beginning to learn about a foreign language, I consider it very difficult because primary school children need more guidance to understand the language. This method is not based on repetition, and students of the basic level needs to know and listen to the language to understand and learn it. Considering that school-age students are exposed to very limited input in many times, this input occurs in large group settings. How effective is the method to provide students with meaningful input? Unfortunately, the majority of public schools have exaggerated number of students, and this method will not be successful in its implementation to the student's body, but it will be a great help in case putting into a practice in a school where the groups of students are small and an academy where any foreign language is taught.